Hey there everyone, would you like to come over to my place and play a game? So I've got this small collection of science related card games and I thought I'd go through them and make a few comments about whether they're good or not. But I would like to invite you all, come on over, we can play some games. This is Origins, an evolutionary journey. It's a card game, loosely defined, put out by Norton, the textbook publishers, and it's clearly intended more for classroom use than for casual play. It's got some strengths. It's actually the most detailed of the games. It's got a lot of information density packed in there. You can learn a fair bit going through it once. So sure, it's okay. Let's just take a look at it. A couple of really good things about this is there's a lot of cards here. There's something like 200 cards. They're well designed. They have lots of interesting questions on them. This is more of a Trivial Pursuit sort of game, where you will be asked a great many questions by the cards and you answer them correctly and you win cards, and the winners at the end are the ones who've got the most cards. But it is nicely organized. You can see here it's color coded, so each of the different colors represents a different format, a different discipline that you can focus on. So for instance, genetics down here is color coded blue. There's others on fundamentals, pink, evolution, primates. This is primarily for biological anthropology, so it's got a fair amount of detail on just primate evolution. Origins and transitions, and being human. Being human is, again, that anthropological emphasis that you'll find in this particular set of cards. It's pretty straightforward to play, but unfortunately I would say that it's really something more for the classroom. This is a game where I could imagine a teacher using it as a prompt to ask details about various phenomena. So let's just take a look at some of the genetics questions, for instance. Okay, so here, for instance, it says, show the following image to the opposing team. The team wins a card if they can correctly identify the image. Can you tell what it is? This looks like a karyogram or a karyotype. And you just flip it over. Yep, there it is. Karyotype. It says, I win. I'm already ahead. Okay, anyway. So like I say, the strengths are, it's got lots of detail. You can go through all these different questions. The weaknesses are, this isn't really a game. It's a drill and practice exercise for the kids in a classroom. It's okay. I can see using this myself. I have used this myself in the classroom, just as a tool to get kids started on thinking about particular concepts and terms. But it has very little replay value. Once you know all the answers, you're done. There's no point in playing with it anymore. So it's an interesting exercise. It's kind of handy to keep around for completeness sake, but it's not something that I will ever play on a cold, rainy day with my wife. Sorry. This game is called Women in Science. And what it is intended for is to teach players something about famous women who have played a role in science. It's got 44 cards. All the instructions are on cards on the inside. Its strengths are that it does really do a good job of introducing you to lots of different women who have played important roles in science. It's nicely illustrated in a cartoonish sort of way, and it's kind of fun that way. Its weaknesses are, can I call this a weakness? It's not a phenomenal game. It's a variant of Gin Rummy. And in some ways, it really doesn't take advantage of the fact that it's about science and it's about women in science. The essence of the game is that you deal out cards, and what you have to do is make runs. That, for instance, you have to get all the yellow cards. If you get 4 yellow cards, you get to put them down, and that represents a laboratory. Okay. And you play until you've got these runs all collected, and the player who has the most laboratories with a coherent theme wins the game. So again, it's color-coded. So you can see here, for instance, yellow, that must be genetics, because Nettie Stevens, I know her, knew of her. She's a famous geneticist, the one who discovered, it says, one of the first scientists to describe the X and Y chromosomes and their role in sex determination. So that's nice. I mean, you get all these cards and it tells you about these famous people and what they discovered, so it's kind of useful that way. They are, however, reduced to simple colors. So here's, 4 famous women geneticists. Your goal is to collect a genetics lab. Purple, for instance, is our psychologists. This one is a physicist. So you get the idea, is you just have to put these together, you play and you get them. It's got a few other quirks, like there are special cards, like a clone card. You get to play that on any other card, and it then becomes a duplicate. So yes, you can have 2 Hedy Lamars in your game. There are also cards, let's see if I can find one, that in some ways make the game more intense. Let's see if I can find them. I can't find them now. For instance, there are cards that players can play on another person's lab group and break it up. So there's some going back and forth with that sort of thing. As a game, it's not bad. It's fun. It's a little bit cutthroat at times, especially when you start breaking up other people's hard-earned lab groups. As far as the science goes, the cards where the science is really just in the flavor text on the cards, which isn't the greatest. It's not actually implemented in the game. And its version of science here is you're playing more the role of an administrator, and all scientists hate administrators, you know that. So you're playing the role of an administrator and trying to gather up these famous scientists into lab groups and achieve fame and fortune that way, which is not really how science is done. But okay, it's a reasonable game. You can play this. You can have fun with this. You can learn a little bit about women in science. That's a plus. So overall, I'd give it a B as a not bad game to play, but I would have liked to have seen more actual representation of the concepts of science in the gameplay. This is a game called Go Extinct, and it comes with a game board. The game board isn't really necessary, but it's kind of nice to help you visualize the different clades that are involved here. As you might guess from the name, this is based on the old card game Go Fish. So basically what you're going to do here is you're going to deal out cards to all the players, and they're going to look through their hand, and they're going to ask the player next to them if they have a particular card. And if they don't, they get to say Go Extinct, and they end their turn. If they do have a specific creature, then they give that to the other player, to the first player, and the game proceeds. And your whole goal is to build up a complete clade, and there are different groups here. So for example, if you just look here, there's over here, let me move this a little bit so you can see it. Over here, for instance, here's the Lepidosaurs. There's 3 different species illustrated there. So this is one whole clade, and your goal is to get those 3 cards, and then you get points for that. Some of the clades have just 2 representatives, like the crocs only have 2. Others have 4, like the mammals up there at the top have 4 different representatives. So there's that variation here. You got different sizes of clades to play with. The other thing is, because it's cladistically organized, you can ask for different levels of the clade. So for example, you could ask the other player, do you have a king snake? But you could also ask, do you have a lepidosaur? Or a tail loser, as they call it here. Or you could ask them if they have a diapsid, which includes everything up here. I suppose you could even ask if they have a tetrapod, which would be every single card in the game. So you'd have to give you something, but it could be any of the cards out here, so it wouldn't help you much. So that's one quirk of the game. You get different levels of the clades that you can ask for the cards. Anyway, gameplay proceeds. You just keep doing this until all the clades have been discovered, and you lay them out, and you get points for each complete clade. So if you get a 2-card clade, you get 10 points. If it's a 3-card clade, you get 20 points. If it's a 4-card clade, you get 30 points. So that's kind of straightforward. It's easy to play. I kind of like it because it forces you to think in terms of clades and in terms of hierarchies and patterns of descent. So conceptually, it's a good game to illustrate that key point. It's fairly simple and straightforward. I think any age could play this. It's intended for kids, so yeah, it's something you can do with the whole family. It's reasonable play. It's reasonably quick, and it's worth replay. So I think it's not bad as a game. I'll give it an A- here. One reservation, one thing that bugs me about it is they got all these groups, and they insist on giving them cutesy names. So, for instance, amniotes are called shell shockers. Amphibians are called slime balls. I don't know if that was really necessary. They're kind of annoying little names. And the one thing I know about kids, at least when I was one and when my kids were kids, is they don't mind learning fancy Latin names for exotic animals. So they could have just scratched that whole thing and just gone with the official names. It would have been a little less aggravating to those of us who know what a Laurasiatherian is. And anyway, not bad. You could play this. You could have fun with it. I think it was a good investment. Again, the big thing here is this is a game where you don't just sit there and learn details. You don't just memorize details, but you actually look for patterns and you think about the concepts in order to do well. And you have to understand this whole idea of nested clades of organisms. Okay, recommended. I forgot to show you the cards. The cards are actually very nice. Good illustrations. They also illustrate on all the cards the hierarchy of the clades that you can follow. They give you some basic information on them. So like for instance here, the Laurasiatherians, they all share an ancestor from the northern supercontinent, Laurasia. You get the idea. So they're pretty good cards, kind of pretty. Very attractive. So yeah, get it, play it. This is a brand new game called Clades. Again, it's a card game. There are 2 different versions of it available. One uses extant species, that's just the one over here, just called Clades. And there's also Clades Prehistoric, if you want to play with extinct animals. Okay, there's a couple of things I really like about this game. One is that it's entirely original. Yeah, I've seen some other games, some other card games. They're based on things like Go Fish or Rummy or whatever. But this one, this is something completely different, which is always good to see. Okay, let's crack open a box. Okay, so the box contains instructions. It contains the big deck of cards right there. It's a fairly straightforward game to play, but the examples in the rule book are extremely helpful because it's a little bit abstract. Okay, so here's what you got. You got all these cards that illustrate one of three clades. So you can be either arthropods, got different arthropods in here. We got sauropsids. We've got, let's see, mammalia. So those are the three major groups we're going to be looking at. Within each of these groups, there are variants. So for instance, this is arthropods that live in water. That's what that means. And on this particular card, there are two individual animals there. Here's something similar, arthropods that live on water, but this card has three different animals on it. Here's arthropods of a different color, yellow arthropods, and these are capable of flights. They live in the air. You get the idea. There's a whole bunch of variables on each card that you're going to sort through. Okay. There's another difference here. It's played in a unique way in that what you do is you lay out 12 cards. Okay, that's the start of play, and then each player is also dealt their own secret card, which we'll hold off to the side there. And then what you do is you flip over all these cards in the middle. So there's a little bit of sorting to start the game. So we're going to flip these all over. And then you're supposed to sort them, so we'll put the mammals at the top and the arthropods at the bottom. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so we got a bunch of arthropods in our list here. There's our mammals up at the top, our arthropods go down here, mammal, sauropods in the middle. We're just doing this to make it a little easier to sort things out as we go. Okay, so we're going to get, oh, we're kind of mammal rich here. Okay, we sorted all these cards. And then what you do is you turn over your personal private card. So there's mine, for example. And what you want to do is form clades. That is, you want to look for some cards here that to form a triple where they're either all the same color and different for each of the other parameters, or different in all four parameters. Remember, there's four things. You got the number of animals, the color of the card, the environment it lives in, and what kind of organism it is. This is a sauropsid. So what you have to do is scan through and try to find something that complements this. That would be a triple. So for instance, I could say, okay, I'm going to go for that. Yeah, this is a triple right here. I already got one. Good for me. Okay, so you see what... Oh, no, that doesn't work because this is red and that's red. Oh, well, bugger that. See, it starts getting hard here. You got to do some pattern recognition. So let's see, there's a sauropsid with three. Oh, let's see, maybe that will work. No, that won't work. You get the idea. You're got to think a little bit here to put together a group where you don't have any overlaps. So you're doing this, you're staring at those. So for instance, this is an air one and it's green. Oh, no, I can't do that one either. So you see I was looking first. Okay, well there's 3 green ones, and there's 1, 2, 3 in there. But you see how it's got 2 mammals and 1 sauropsid? That doesn't work. I'd have to find something that differs. Anyway, this is a hard game, as you can see. I'm struggling a little bit, but that's good. This is a thinking game where you have to actually work through what you got there. Okay, let me see. Maybe this will work. No, that's a sauropsid. This will work. Okay. There we go. So you see, there's 3 on each one, so the number is the same. The colors are all different. The environments are all different. And we have 3 different groups of animals here. So this would count as a triple, so I get to keep that and take it to the side. And then what I have to do is draw a new card. And also I think I have to replace all the cards that I took away. So there's another mammal. No, we're mammal rich, all right. Anyway, you get the idea. Now, one other unique thing about this is that there aren't turns. So everyone is playing all at once. They're all sitting there with their cards, staring at this collection of cards, and trying to find triples among them. As I just showed you, it's not trivial, at least not if you're not experienced with the game. And you're trying to assemble these triples all simultaneously, which makes for a fun, slightly competitive, but also slightly cooperative game. So you can work this out pretty well. Loads of fun. And what I think is most valuable about this is a game that forces you to think in new ways, to think about patterns. It's not really detail oriented, so don't worry too much about the specific organisms like some of the games do. And it's attractive. Those are pretty cards. So yeah, another one that's worth trying out sometime. Let me just show you the prehistoric one. It's the same rules, same pattern of play, but in this case, you've just got extinct forms all in there to sort through. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. It just might be a little bit more novel to be looking at these odd forms here. Okay. Again, I recommend this one. Give it a try. You'll have fun. All right, my final analysis then. So Origins is interesting. It's deep. It's got lots of information. It's not a great game. And I think it's more intended for things like classroom use. So I would recommend it highly to, for instance, high school teachers, perhaps introductory college courses. It would be a useful tool to, drill and practice and help students grasp basic points in evolutionary biology and in particular anthropology. Women in Science is a fun game. It's good. I would recommend it highly. That you can play this and get a good feel for the breadth of contributions of women to science. So, and that's really its purpose, is to help you understand it's not all white men doing everything. So that's a good value. It's very useful. Representation matters. So let's do more of that. Also for kids, the cartoony illustrations are really good and very entertaining. It's a lot of flavor text, but that flavor text is actually very informative and helps you understand these different women and what they contributed. Go Extinct. Well, it's a fun game. It's basically Go Fish, but it does introduce kids to the concept of clade. It helps kids understand the hierarchical organization of life on Earth. So in that sense, it's really, really good. Didactically, it's helpful to understand that process. But it's also a very pretty game. this one would be very entertaining. It's also the most expensive of the four, but then you can tell they invested a bit in quality components and it really looks good. So give it a shot. And finally, Clades. I gotta say this, Clades is my favorite of all four of these. It's deceptively simple. It's very original. I like the way that you have to think about what you're doing. You have to think about pattern matching and organizing. Those are useful skills for scientists, and I found that very nice. It's also an attractive game. It will drive you a little crazy, as you saw when I was practicing it, trying to get the right matches and noticing there's 4 different variables you got to balance out in the cards, which makes it challenging. And I think challenging is a good thing to have in a game. But my bottom line is you need to go buy them all. Sorry, they're all pretty good. You should sink a little cash into these and pick them up, especially if you've got kids. The last 2 in particular, I think, would be very useful for kids. Women in Science, yeah, you need to get kids exposed to the fact that it's not all Bill Nye, the science guy, doing everything. Origins, I'll just have to say, well, it's a little dry, and it's more of an upper level sort of game for kids, not kids, young adults who are seriously trying to master some of the concepts of anthropology and evolution. But hey, if you don't want to spend the money on them, just come on over to my house. We can have an evening playing games. It's all good. Talk to you later.